Albert H. Hart Sr., first president 1928 to 1929. Albert was born in Vermilion in 1888. His father was born in Hessen-Kassel, a state in what is now Germany. Many early Vermilion families came from this area. Albert and Emily had two children, Albert H. Jr., known as Jim around town, and Jane Pinckney Hart. Albert purchased a building where Lee's Landing is today on August 2, 1912, and went into the drugstore business. He then purchased the building which exists today on the northwest corner of Liberty Avenue and North Main Street, installed a central heating system, made changes in the interior, rebuilt the storefront, and moved his drugstore over to this location. Interestingly, along with Albert's drugstore business, the building occupied many other businesses, and at one time, the Masonic Lodge occupied space on the second floor. Albert's son, Jim, took over the Hart's drugstore business when he finished his formal pharmacy training. Albert Sr. passed on in 1956 from Parkinson's disease. Albert was president of Rotary in 1928 to 1929, the Rotary fiscal year. Francis Irvine Wilson, third president 1930 to 1931. Francis Irvine, Tug. Wilson was born January 19, 1895 in Findlay, Ohio to Howard G. and Martha Bell Irvine Wilson, who came from Pennsylvania. He received his law degree from the University of Indiana. Tug was drafted into the United States Army on April 26, 1918 as an infantry soldier, spending time at Fort Harrison, Indiana. Tug complained of his broken arches in his feet. He was discharged at the rank of sergeant early, apparently because of his arches, or because the war was over, on March 15, 1919 at the age of 24 years. Tug married Ruth Dukes around 1920. Tug and Ruth bore one child, a son, Thomas, in the year 1924. According to the 1930 census, Tug's family lived at 118 Washington Street, Vermilion. Later, they moved to 5626 Huron Street. Tug and Ruth purchased the house in 1942 from Albert Wakefield, who had the house built in the year 1923. Tug had the size increased to almost double. Sometime around 1925 to 1930, he became sales manager for the Wakefield Brass Company in Vermilion. He did very well in this position, which he held until his retirement sometime in the 1960s. Francis Tug was a community-minded person with his hand in many city affairs, such as a member of the Vermilion School System Board of Directors, a member of the Ely Masonic Lodge No. 424, a member of the Cleveland Shrine Lodge, a member of the American Legion Post No. 397, and a charter member of the Vermilion Rotary Club, chartered in 1928. Francis Irvine Wilson passed away from congestive heart failure on January 6, 1982 at the Methodist Hospital in Indianapolis, Indiana. Burial was at the Maple Grove Cemetery in Vermilion, Ohio. Albert David A.D. Baumhart, 6th President 1933 to 34. From his autobiography.
I was born to Augustus and Margaret Baumhart, the seventh child, and the fifth son. My parents were farmers, and while our farm was 1 mile west of town, our home was in town on Huron Street. At the age of 6, I, like all of the other children, began working by driving home, each night 5 to 8 cows for milking purposes and returning them each morning to their pastures. This was done before and after school each day. Also, I had several customers to deliver milk to, which was conveyed to their homes in tin pails and at the price of 5 cents per quart or 3 cents per pint, and skimmed milk and sour milk for pancakes was free, and all surplus blue milk was skimmed and the cream churned into butter. This dairy business was continued by an older brother, after our parents' death, and upon his death in 1923 there ended 63 years of continuous dairy business. At the age of 8 years, I became afflicted with a tubercular hip and did not leave the yard again for 3 years. This rendered me too delicate for farm work, so work was found for me in a grocery store. After this job failed, I was transferred to a dry goods general store where I remained for about 6 months. My school life was begun in the State Street brick building. 2 years later, I was transferred to a school known as the Old Seminary, a framed structure of 2 rooms which occupied the site where the water tower now stands. Later I was transferred to the brick building again, where I continued in school until the course was completed. Although I finished the high school course, and not being concerned that I should write an oration to be delivered from the stage platform at the town hall on commencement night, I quit school 2 weeks before the term ended to embark on the pill rolling game. This, of course, was a bad mistake, for it caused me to go through life without possessing a high school diploma. I attended College of Pharmacy. After leaving the college, I went to Berea, Ohio, and worked in a drugstore for nearly a year. Returning to Vermilion, I bought the Quigley store, then located on Division Street, where Al Hite Hardware Store now stands. In 1898, I made a contract with the Bell Telephone Company to put in the first telephone exchange in Vermilion. The contract provided that I was to furnish the heat, light, office room, and proper operators to handle the business. The exchange opened March 18, 1898 with 19 subscribers. This grew rapidly until about 200 subscribers were obtained. This remained in my drugstore for about 12 years. On December 3, 1903, our store burned, catching on fire from another building in a wood-framed row. The fire occurred about 9 o'clock. So, we had to remove part of the drug stock. In less than an hour, I had purchased the Harris Drug Store, then located where the Rathbun grocery store now is, and by 7 o'clock the next morning was doing business in the new location. The telephone subscribers were in working order by 7 o'clock next evening. The following spring, the Lake Shore Electric line was opened and I was made ticket agent and electric package agent. My stay here lasted 2 years, and then the store was moved into a part of the room now occupied by Norman Ness. After another period of 7 years, I found this room too small, so I built and moved into my present location, June 23, 1916. In addition to running my store, I was one of the charter members of the Eastern Star Lodge, was for 10 years collector of customs for the port, a member of the Board of Trustees of the Congregational Church, served as a member of the school board for 7 years, and was a member of the Republican County Committee for 25 years.
A.D. Baumhart passed away on December 17, 1961 at the age of 88 and is buried in Maple Grove Cemetery. Floyd Hull was the 7th president of the Vermilion Rotary Club. His term was the fiscal year 1934 to 1935. Floyd was born on April 8, 1899, graduated from Vermilion High School and a business college. Floyd was manager of Inglebree and Hull Coal and Builders Supply in Vermilion. He later bought out the Inglebrees in the late 30s or early 40s, which gave Floyd sole ownership. A few organizations Floyd belonged to were the Lodge of the Master Masons, Ely Lodge for 24. In the year 1930, he held the East Chair of Worshipful Master of the Lodge. Floyd also served as Lodge Treasurer. He was also a member of the Royal Arch Chapter 233. He served on the Vermilion Fire Department and held the position of Treasurer for 11 years. Floyd was a member of the Vermilion Boat Club and served as the Commodore for 1 year. He attended and was a member of the Congregational Church in Vermilion. Floyd was married to Edna Gegenheimer Hull, and together they had 2 children, Nelson and Lucille Hull Clark. In 1951, Floyd passed away at the young age of 52 from the disease of bulbar polio. Floyd was well liked in the community of Vermilion. Wilbert Malin Iden, 8th President 1935 to 1936. Wilbert Malin Iden was born to Eugene Wilson Iden and Rose Fisher Iden on March 16, 1903 in Cleveland, Ohio. Wilbert spent his growing up years in the Cleveland area and its suburbs. He graduated from Cleveland schools and went on through college to receive his Doctor of Dentistry degree, DDS, at Ohio State University. During Wilbert's college days, he liked to come to Vermilion and stay at the Darby Place, summer lakefront cottages on West Lake Road, to get some summer fun and sun. He loved the experiences so much that when he received his dentistry degree, he decided to hang his shingle in this quaint little town at that time. Wilbert's first office location was in a business building called Hart's Drug Store on the northwest corner of Main Street and Liberty Avenue, second floor. He later moved his practice to the corner of Washington Street and Liberty Avenue in the front portion of the Lorraine Telephone Building. In 1948, he built an office in his home at 519 Washington Street. Wilbert, he liked to be called either Doc or Bill, soon fit in and became friends with the town's folks, many becoming patients of Doc's. Dr. Bill was one of not more than 2 dentists in the town for quite some years. During World War II, Bill joined the Coast Guard Reserve, at which time he was assigned to a Coast Guard boat to patrol the Lorraine Black River one night per week. Dr. Bill spent his Friday evening hours with his buddies at Fergie's pool hall playing poker. One of Bill's hobbies was small sailboat racing on Lake Erie. There was a very active sailboat racing fleet in those years, which has carried on to the present. Dr. Bill was involved in several organizations such as the American Dental Association, Rotary Club, Rotary International, elected president in the Rotary fiscal year 1935 to 1936, named Commodore of the Vermilion Boat Club in Vermilion, and associated with the Vermilion Olympic Club. He retired in 1965. Dr. Wilbert Iden passed on January 8, 1981 at the age of 77. Verde's Bryce White, 11th President 1938 to 1939. Verde's Bryce White, the 11th President of the Vermilion Rotary Club, Rotary International, was born on December 15, 1903 to Jesse P. and Chloe Heron White at Sandusky, Ohio. Bryce's siblings consisted of 1 brother and 2 sisters. He spent his young life growing up in Sandusky and was a graduate of Sandusky High School. Bryce then went on to higher education by attending Oberlin College, majoring in pre-med. He went on to attend and graduate from Kirksville Osteopathic Hospital in Kirksville, Missouri. Bryce and his wife, Betty Osberg White, moved to Vermilion to practice his profession of osteopathic medicine and to raise their family, which consisted of 3 boys, David, Bruce, and Stuart. He built a Sears house and a small building for his office on the corner of Main and Ferry Streets in 1933. Bryce was an excellent athlete. He was a good tennis player and shot par golf. He was also Erie County Horseshoes champion for many years. One time at the Erie County Fair, Bryce beat the Michigan State champion at this game. During one summer day on Lake Erie, Bryce saved a young drowning boy's life. He learned to read Braille to make his fingertips more sensitive to help in his medical profession. He loved to play bridge and enjoyed Wednesday and Friday night boxing matches on television while eating his favorite ice cream. Bryce loved to go hunting with his Vermilion cronies, especially deer hunting. But, according to his son, Bryce was especially known for being an avid bass and muskie fisherman. Bryce and his friend would travel to East Harbor to try their luck at small bass fishing. The story goes they would bring their catch home in a milk can and deposit the fish in the local fish and game pond during his membership there. Bryce was also a community-minded activist. He served on the Vermilion School Board, was the Vermilion School sports physician for many years, member of the Vermilion Fish and Game Association, member of the Vermilion Boat Club, member of the Ely Masonic Lodge for 24, one of the original staff doctors at Sandusky Memorial Hospital, and lastly, a Vermilion Rotary Club member. Earl Thompson English, 13th President 1940 to 1941. Earl Thompson English was born on July 4, 1889 in Marionville, Pennsylvania, where he spent his younger years growing up. Earl's college admissions were Allegheny College, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Iliff School of Theology, Denver, Colorado, and Northwestern University, Chicago, Illinois. Earl T. English married the love of his life, Zella McLaughlin, on July 3, 1917. Earl and Zella bore and raised two children, Catherine Jean, married name, Dennell, and Robert Thompson English. Reverend Earl enjoyed numerous positions, such as Professor of Biology, Heidelberg College, Tiffin, Ohio. Also, Reverend Earl was called to pastor in churches located in the states of Pennsylvania, Colorado, and Ohio. The English family finally made their permanent home coming to Vermilion, Ohio in 1927, where Reverend Earl was pastor of the Congregational Church from 1927 until 1956. Reverend Earl's final claim to fame came when he wrote a novel, The Hole in the Hill, which was self-published in 1975. His true-to-life novel was based on some of his experiences of living in some small coal mining towns. As the book Biographies states it, Reverend English writes, "How humor smooths the road, and a preacher's life need never have a dull moment." An interesting fact, his wife, Zella, had no idea that her husband wrote and published the book until after his death, at which time the books arrived at her home through the mail. Most books were sold to the townsfolk. Reverend Earl T. English was a community-minded leader, taking on positions such as scout leader for many years, member of the Vermilion Rotary Club, member of the Free and Accepted Masons Lodge number 424, Vermilion, and after his retirement, pastor emeritus. Lester H. Kishman, 16th President 1943 to 1944. Lester Kishman was born on the east side of Vermilion, about a half-mile west of Baumhart Road, in his family's home on the lakeside of Liberty Avenue, U.S. Route 6, stop number 121 in the year 1905. In those days, when the Lakeshore Electric Line was running in full swing from Cleveland to Toledo, stop numbers were used instead of house numbers along the rail line to signify residence locations. It was from the beach at this location that his grandfather first associated the Kishman name with the commercial fishing industry. Lester was the youngest of three boys born to their parents, Henry B. and Flora Phelps. Les, affectionately nicknamed, attended Vermilion schools using the electric line as his school bus until the family moved to Vermilion, about the time of his 8th grade. Les graduated from Wittenberg College in Springfield, Ohio, where he was a member of Beta Theta Pi fraternity. The railways again served him with transportation to and from college to his home. Upon graduation in 1928, Les worked for a Springfield, Ohio manufacturer of commercial and industrial steel windows. After a training program, he entered sales covering Ohio and Kentucky. In June of 1930, he was transferred to the Boston office, but the severe depression caused the company to close the office and Les found himself unemployed. Returning to Vermilion, he learned the process of commercial fishing. Upon the retirement of his father, Henry B., who was president of the Kishman Fish Company, a stock company, Lester was named president and took charge of the affairs of the corporation, the family fishing business. Les met Almina Yingling in the fall of 1924. They were married in 1930. Together, the two bore 3 children, Gretchen, Karen, and Roger. In 1937, the family moved to the newly established Vermilion Lagoons. The Kishmans were the first to live all 4 seasons in the small community of summer homes. Lester joined Rotary in 1936. He was very active in the club during his lifetime. Lester was the first Paul Harris Fellow installed and honored in the Vermilion Club by his Rotarian son, Roger. Among less attributes, additional to the above, are member of the United Church of Christ Congregational, served on the board of the Lorraine Telephone Company, now CenturyLink, for many years, and was a member of the Vermilion Boat Club. Lester passed away in 2000 at the age of 95. He graciously donated a large amount of common stock to the Rotary Club, which was used later on, in 2005 to construct the 100th anniversary Rotary Park at the site of the Marine Navigational Tower adjacent to the river and West River Road. A memorial plaque was placed by the flagpoles in his honor. Paul B. Rutnick, 19th President 1946 to 1947. Paul B. Rutnick was born to Martin and Catherine Kleinhans Rutnick on May 5, 1904 in Cleveland Heights, Ohio. Paul, along with his siblings, grew up in Brooklyn Heights, Cleveland, Ohio. After completing high school, Paul attended Ohio State University, was a member of fraternity Phi Kappa Sigma. Paul married Margaret Schuler on January 17, 1928, raising 3 children: son, Roger, daughters, Marilyn, and Donna. The family moved from Cleveland to make their new home by the local Rutnick Gardens in the early 1930s, which was just west of Heidelberg Beach. Paul was instrumental in acquiring the new 48-acre property, as well as building a 3.5-acre greenhouse on the land. Paul worked closely with Dr. L.J. Alexander, plant pathologist at the Ohio Agriculture Experimental Station in Worcester, Ohio, to produce new experimental plantings as some possible greenhouse crops, one of which was the English cucumber. To his credits, Paul was a member of the Cleveland Hothouse Growers Association, the Vegetable Growers Association of America, the Erie County Commissioners Board, the Vermilion School Board, Vermilion Rotary Club, Free and Accepted Masons, 8th Reformed Church, Cleveland, Evangelical and Reformed Church of Christ, Vermilion, and the Cleveland Athletic Club. One of Paul's scariest and heroic experiences was on one cold winter night. The year was 1950 when he and his neighbor, Les Reutner, were called out to save 10 ice-skating teenagers stranded on an ice float just north of Ruggles Beach, west of the greenhouse site. Unknown to the 10 kids at the time, the wind had changed to the south, thus breaking the ice and shoving the float northward out farther into the lake. One of the high school seniors in the group, Jim Moses, jumped into the icy waters and swam to shore and called for help. Classmate Bob Rathbun stayed on to beckon the en route lifeboat with his cigarette lighter. Luckily, Paul and Les reached the party, pulled them on board, and rowed them to safety. Jim Moses was honored and nominated for the coveted medal of the Carnegie Hero Award in regard to his exceptional act of bravery. Paul and Margaret's 2 daughters, Marilyn and Donna, were included in the skating party on that night. Paul B. Rutnick was called to rest December 21, 1993, at the age of 89. Dr. Paul S. Naegeli, 20th President of Vermilion Rotary, 1947 to 1948. Dr. Paul S. Naegeli was born September 29, 1910 in Vermilion, Ohio, to George M. and Ollie Rose Abel Naegeli. Both of Paul's parents were born in Vermilion, and his maternal grandfather, Jacob Abel, was born in Vermilion in 1848. Paul graduated from Vermilion High School in 1928. He attended St. Andrew's College in Aurora, Ontario, Canada, and graduated from the Ohio College Chiropody, now the Ohio College of Podiatric Medicine, in Cleveland, Ohio, in 1932. After practicing podiatry in Cleveland for a few years in the 1930s, Paul moved his practice to Vermilion and also worked with his father and his brother, Dr. Lawrence Sonny Naegeli, also a podiatrist, at Naegeli's Meats and Groceries in Vermilion. Paul served with the U.S. Navy Seabees in the Pacific Theater in World War II. He was stationed in Pearl Harbor and was awarded battle medals by the Navy for both Iwo Jima and Okinawa. He received a minor wound in an ammunition dump explosion on the island of Iwo Jima. Paul married Eileen Neat in January 1944 while on leave from the Navy. They had 3 sons and a daughter, Mike, Stu, Dick, and Lorna. After the conclusion of World War II, Paul returned to Vermilion and again worked at Naegeli Brothers Meats and Groceries. Following the deaths of his father and brother Sonny, Paul closed the store in 1960. He continued to practice podiatry at his office in Vermilion until his retirement in 1981. Paul was active in the American Legion, the Masonic Lodge, Local Number 424, the Vermilion Rotary, Rotary International, and was an active member and deacon at the United Church of Christ Congregational in Vermilion. Paul was very active in the Rotary Club. He was a Paul Harris Fellow and was very proud of his 37 years of perfect attendance at the local club. He especially enjoyed attending Rotary meetings throughout the U.S. and Canada. For many years, Paul was editor of the local Rotary newsletter. He was treasurer of the Vermilion branch of the Salvation Army for many years and helped to establish the Erie, Huron, and Ottawa County Vocational Education Program, EHOVE. Paul was active in many community affairs throughout his life. He loved to bowl and play golf also. Paul died of Parkinson's disease on March 20th, 2000 in Vermilion at the age of 89. Frederick Harold Stutz, 22nd President 1949 to 1950. Frederick Harold Stutz was born on March 18, 1900, in Upper Sandusky, Ohio to Adam and Clara Kinley Stutz. The family later moved to Sandusky, where Harold graduated from high school. Harold, as he liked to be called, was called into the Army, probably toward the end of the First World War for a short period. The war ended in the year 1918. After Harold's stint in the Army, he went on to Denison College, Stetson University, and then to the George Washington School of Law in Washington, D.C. In 1926, Harold married Ruth Wakefield of Vermilion, the daughter of Frederick William and Mary Polly Wakefield. While he was employed by the investment firm of Hayden Miller, Harold and Ruth spent a few years in Tiffin, Ohio, where their daughter Marion was born. Later on, the young family moved to Lakewood where their second daughter, Nancy, was born. In 1933, the family moved to Vermilion, Ohio, and rented the house on Huron Street. The house, still in existence, is now a B&B called the Captain Gilchrist House. At that time, the Lorraine Banking Company had the house in foreclosure. Hence, Harold and Ruth were able to rent the home for $10 per month from the bank. After 4 years of earnest frugality, they were able to build their dream home adjacent to the river at the end of Huron Street, Vermilion. Harold had his law office and practice located on Division, later renamed, Main Street a few doors south of Liberty Street on the west side. In 1979, Harold retired his law practice and moved to Cincinnati, Ohio to be near his daughter, Nancy. Then on to Hendersonville, North Carolina, where Harold passed away on April 1985 of natural causes, never having had any significant aches or pains in all of his years. Harold was a member of Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity, the Vermilion Rotary Club, Ely Lodge number 424 of the Free and Accepted Masons, and the Vermilion Grange. He spent his leisure time studying ancient Greece, reading, enjoying classical music and watching the boats go by on the river. In 1946, under the auspices of the Erie County Bar Association, Harold traveled to Germany to search for heirs to the various estates in Sandusky, Ohio, which had been in limbo during the war years. The city of Sandusky had a substantial German population at that time. This was the first of many international trips that Harold and Ruth took until Ruth's passing. Because Harold prided himself on near-perfect attendance at Rotary, he sought out make-up meetings wherever they went, much to Ruth's chagrin. She would say, "What? You'd rather go to a Rotary meeting rather than the Louvre?" Clifford H. Parsons, 24th President 1951 to 1952. Clifford H. Parsons was born August 28, 1886 in Vermilion, Ohio. His parents were Burdette Parsons and Frances Horton. Clifford, Cliff, as he was called by his friends and town folk, attended Vermilion Public School System. At the young age of 17, the year 1903, Cliff was employed by a lake freighter company carrying its wares throughout the Great Lakes region. In 1910, he became a commercial fisherman, which spanned the rest of Clifford's life. Cliff met the love of his life, Alma Blattner, and together bore one son, Nelson G. Parsons, on January 9, 1913. He built a house at 608 Decatur Street. Clifford, along with his son, Nelson, built the first all-steel trap net commercial fishing tug on the Great Lakes at his Parsons Fish Company in Vermilion, Ohio. There were several fishing businesses in the town of Vermilion. Parsons Fish Company was one of the major players. Besides managing his business, Cliff was very active in the community of Vermilion, namely the village government, Vermilion Rotary Club, as president 1951 to 1952, and attending Evangelical and Reformed Church of Christ, Vermilion. Clifford H. Parsons passed on in March 4, 1979 at the age of 92. Raymond E. Jim Maurer, 27th President 1954 to 1955. Raymond E. Maurer was born June 6, 1918 in Vermilion, Ohio on Douglas Street, to Clarence G. and Amelia, née Hoffman, Maurer. Raymond would answer to the name Jim. In Jim's growing years, he spent them working on his grandfather's George Maurer family farm, located just off Route 60, State Street, just at the city limits at that time. Jim's nickname was given to him by the farmhands he worked with. The name stuck throughout Jim's life. On the farm, Jim helped with the farm chores, such as tending the draft horses used to plow the fields, until he graduated from high school. Jim graduated from Vermilion High School and the Oberlin School of Commerce, earning a CPA degree circa 1939 to 1940. About this period of Jim's life, he married, to be, his lifelong love, Evelyn Stokes, on October 12, 1940. In time, Jim and Evelyn bore two sons, Ray E., also called Jim II, and Thomas F. The two married Ellen Barth and Deborah Alamo, respectively. As his son, Jim II described it, his dad's work was his life. Jim had several occupations during his lifetime. Some of them were multitasked at the same time. He hung his shingle as a private practice accountant, was vice president and co-owner of Maurer, Weichel Dairy of Vermilion, Vermilion Township Fiscal Officer, 1976 to 1991, and the accountant for South Shore Packing Company, an olive packing concern specializing in fancy Spanish olives. Jim was very active in community affairs, his church, and various organizations, such as past master of Masonic Ely Lodge No. 424, Vermilion, member and treasurer of Royal Arch Masons No. 233, Vermilion, member and past president of Lorain County Scottish Rite and Shrine Club, elder and deacon of Evangelical and Reformed Church, and president of the Vermilion Rotary Club. Ray Jim passed on this date, May 16, 1995, in his hometown at the age of 76. Cletus Clare DeWitt, 28th President 1955 to 1956. Cletus K. DeWitt was born December 29, 1902 in Tiffin, Ohio. He graduated from Columbia High School, Tiffin, majoring in college preparatory subjects. Cletus received his degree in education at Heidelberg College and went on to finish his master's degree in education in 1925 at Ohio State University. During his senior year at Heidelberg, CK, as he was affectionately called about town, was chosen captain of the football team in 1924. Cletus was first hired in at Minerva, Ohio as teacher and coach. The year was 1925. As soon as his sweetheart, Grace Harding, graduated from college, Cletus and Grace were married, 1926, then spun off to Niagara Falls for their honeymoon. After his one-year term at Minerva, CK was interviewed by Superintendent George Snyder of the Vermilion, Ohio school system and accepted the teaching and coaching position. Cletus, in time, came up the ranks as principal, then acting superintendent in 1945, and finally to executive head of the Vermilion Public School System in 1946. During his tenure at Vermilion Public Schools, CK watched this sleepy little village of Vermilion grow from the wintertime population of 2,000 to a city of 8,000 with the pupil registration of 2,500. The reason: Ford Motor Company came to build their auto plant 2 miles east of town on Baumhart Road, within the Vermilion School District limits. The total business and management of the school system was handled by Superintendent Cletus, Principal Willis Gebhardt, Executive Secretary Marguerite Ball, and Head Custodian Charles Barber, until the multiple school buildings came to be. During World War II, CK was exempted from the draft because of his community position. He wanted to do his part in the war effort, so he took a summer job at the American shipyards in nearby Lorain, Ohio, helping to build Liberty ships. Cletus and Grace bore 2 sons, Richard H., born June 13, 1928, and John R., born August 17, 1932, who in turn gave the couple 4 grandchildren. Cletus retired on July 31, 1965, after 40 years' service to the education systems of Minerva and Vermilion. Cletus and Grace were members of the United Church of Christ, ENR, in Vermilion. He served on the board of consistory in the church, also taught Sunday school. He served on education organizations, such as CEA, was a member of the Vermilion Grange, along with serving in the Rotary Club of Vermilion. Cletus passed on July 19, 1974, age 71, of heart problems. Leonard K. Osberg, 29th President 1956 to 1957. Leonard K. Osberg was born in Lima, Ohio on May 1, 1893. Leonard enlisted in the Army on April 2, 1918, and reached the rank of Master Sergeant, assigned to the Quartermaster Corps. He was sent overseas to be engaged in the French campaign during World War I. He met his future wife, Anne-Marie de Camp, in the town of Le Mans during this time. The couple were married in Detroit, Michigan on September 24, 1921. They resided in the town of Grosse Pointe Shores, Michigan for a period of time, and was aged 20, and Leonard was 28. The couple bore 1 daughter, Nadine. As written by historian Rich Tarrant, author of The Vermilion Views, Leonard K. Osberg was a man of many faces. He was a man who would be mayor of the village of Vermilion for 3 terms during the 1940s. He was a man with a great voice who sang the national anthem at town gatherings. He was a man who wrote a weekly column for the Vermilion newspaper in the 1930s called Strolling Along with Zeke. Many people knew Leonard and his family, but few knew that he was one of the most famous archers in our nation. Leonard lived with Mr. Arthur Young, a world-famous big game hunter, for 2 years to learn the sport. Aside from being Vermilion's mayor for 3 terms and on city council for 2 years in the 1940s, Leonard was employed as the personnel director at the ITT Wakefield Lighting Division in Vermilion. Leonard was a member of the First Church of Christ Scientist in Lorain, Ohio, a service veteran and member of the American Legion Post 397 in Vermilion, a member of the Vermilion Rotary band playing the snare drum, president of the Vermilion Rotary Club, and served on the Great Lakes Maritime Museum in Vermilion. He was in charge of the Vermilion Room. Lastly, probably in Leonard's later life, he wrote,
"When life's race is nearly run and one sits and gazes back through the years, peace of mind beyond expression must come with the knowledge that amongst your life souvenirs can be found the memory of your having been a toiler in the vineyard of human hearts. Memories of such a life is souvenir enough."
Leonard K. Osberg passed away on December 2nd, 1973 at the age of 80. Ray H. Full, 31st President 1958 to 1959. Ray Full's life was so intertwined with Vermilion. It is so difficult to think of Vermilion without thinking of Ray Full. Ray was a native son of Vermilion, being born here in 1918. Because of family illness, Ray and his family spent winters in Florida. Graduating from a Florida high school and from college, Ray was called to duty because of the World War II having commenced in the year 1941. After Ray was mustered out of the service in 1946, he worked as an aircraft and engine mechanic at the Cleveland Airport. There he met the love of his life, Dawn Malson, who was an air traffic controller at the airport. Ray also instructed pre-flight training at Finn College and Case Western Reserve University. Later on, Ray came back to Vermilion after studying accounting. Ray's father, Otto, who was a commercial fisherman, talked to him negatively on following in his footsteps. He then was hired in as an accountant with the Kishman Fish Company. When the company's president, Lester Kishman, retired, Ray became president and stayed in this capacity until 1972, when Ray and Dawn purchased the corporation. It was written in the Lorraine Journal. Ray was a very hard worker and worked very long hours, 60 and more hours per week, according to the April 4th, 1971 issue at the business, especially when the fish were running and the catch was large. Along with Ray's presidential capacity at Kishman Fish Company, he was diligent in promoting the city of Vermilion. He was very involved in the Chamber of Commerce. Ray was the founder and president of the long-running Vermilion Fish Festival, very influential in the development of the Ohio Fish Producers Association, served 4 years as chairperson of the Erie County Republican Party. Ray earned the respect of both parties at that time, was Commodore of the Vermilion Boat Club in 1951, was an active member of Southern Lake Erie Star Sailing Fleet, worked with the federal government to clean up Lake Erie, treasurer of the Great Lakes Historical Society, whereas he worked hard to keep the Great Lakes Marine Museum in Vermilion. Ray Full was a proven leader in all the organizations that he participated in and in the community which he so loved. And, topping off all of Ray's activities and positions listed above, he found time in his day to belong to Vermilion Rotary Club and to take his turn as the 31st president of the club in 1958 to 59. Ray and his wife, Dawn, had no children, but raised 2 foster daughters. Ray's untimely passing came on January 29, 1985 at the age of 66. George Patterson Wakefield, 34th President 1961 to 1962. George Patterson Wakefield was born in Vermilion on April 11th, 1910 to Frederick William and Mary Polly Wakefield. George's birth house was the family home located on the northwest end of Main Street, which in the years forward became the Great Lakes Maritime Museum. George was schooled all 12 grades at the State Street School. George was affectionately called Duke in school. One of his extracurricular activities was cheerleader. He went on to college majoring in engineering at Ohio State University, also at Findlay State College, but did not receive a degree because he was needed in his father's thriving industrial ceiling lighting manufacturing business, the F.W. Wakefield Brass Company in Vermilion. George married Mary Parsons Baldridge on September 22, 1936, had 3 daughters, Alice, Mary, and Georgia. In the years ahead, George became chief engineer of the Wakefield Corporation, inventing many of the products that kept the company competing with Sylvania, Westinghouse, and General Electric. George's proudest invention was his infrared signal lights that the Japanese could not read. These units were used by the United States Navy in the Pacific Campaign during World War II, which saved many American lives and United States ships. George never served in the armed forces because his work at the factory kept him out. He did spend some time traveling to Washington, D.C. because of his military inventions. Over George's career, he invented and patented 29 items, including Magic Mary, a magnetic paper doll, which was popular during 40s, 50s, and 60s. George's daughter, Mary, stated, "In spite of father's creative and innovative brain and important position with the company, he was a terribly shy and introverted person. He told me that he decided to join Rotary to help him defeat his shyness. In the club, George was appointed greeter to hopefully rid him of the nervousness from shaking hands, which did in time cure him from the shyness. George wanted his daughters to not have his shy tendencies, so every time it was his turn to provide a program for the club, he would ask his daughters to speak at the meeting. Daughter Mary ended up joining Rotary, becoming a Paul Harris Fellow. Finally, the F.W. Wakefield Brass Company was sold to the ITT Corporation in 1966. George stayed on the job for another 3 years, retiring in the year 1969 at the age of 59 years. George and his wife, Mary, settled down to retired life in their home on the lake west of town for 29 years until 1998. The two moved to Virginia to be close to their 3 daughters. George Patterson Wakefield passed on June 16, 2001 at the age of 91. Earl R. Biner, 38th President 1965 to 1966. Earl Biner was born in Avon, Ohio on June 15, 1920 to Edwin and Ethel Kruger Biner. His parents owned a general store in what is now the French Creek section of Avon. Earl started first grade in the Avon Village school system. His family moved to the Vermilion on the lake section of Vermilion when he was in primary school. His father and grandfather built many of the cottages in Vermilion on the lake that later were winterized when the Ford Motor Company moved to the Vermilion area in 1958. Earl graduated from Vermilion High School. He was a veteran of the United States Army during World War II, serving in Iceland. After the service, Earl met and married the love of his life, Betty Moan from Sandusky, Ohio. Earl went on to become a realtor in Vermilion. Earl was also a manager of rental homes in the area. Earl and Betty had 2 daughters, Carol and Diana. During his life, Earl worked to promote Vermilion on the lake. He was a councilman and a volunteer fireman. In the early days, Vermilion on the lake was a village with its own mayor, council, and fire department. Since the family home was down the street a short distance from the fire station, the phone for the fire department was in the Biner home. Calls were taken on a special phone, and the siren was activated from the Biner's home to alert the volunteers to a fire. Earl was also instrumental in preserving the Vermilion on the Lake clubhouse. He served as its manager for a number of years. Earl was a member of the Vermilion Rotary Club for a period of 37 years with an excellent record of perfect attendance in this time span. He became president during the Rotary fiscal year, 1965 to 1966. He was also a Paul Harris Fellow, Rotary International. In addition, Earl was a former member of the Vermilion on the Lake Lot Owners Association, a life member of the Veteran of Foreign Affairs, Post 7576, Vermilion, American Legion, Post 397, 8-Ball Dance Club, Chamber of Commerce, Lorraine Real Estate Board, Senior Fellowship, Lorraine, and member of the Vermilion Boat Club. Earl Biner lost his battle with cancer on January 12, 1994 at the age of 73. Robert S. Schlutterberg, 40th President 1967 to 1968. Robert S. Schlutterberg was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on February 17, 1919. Robert was always known as and called Bud, at least in the town of Vermilion, Ohio. The family moved from Pittsburgh to Lakewood, Ohio when Bud was age 10, 1929. He graduated from Lakewood High School and went on to Yale University, where he majored in English literature. Bud completed his graduate work at Harvard University and went on to receive his CPA. Bud served 3.5 years in the United States Army Air Force during the Second World War. After the war, Bud joined Ernst & Ernst, a national firm of certified public accountants in Cleveland, Ohio for 3 years, where he was involved with the audit staff. He then was employed several years in the controller/treasurer departments of 2 Cleveland process industries. In the year 1952, Bud resigned to accept the treasurer's position with F.W. Wakefield Brass Company in Vermilion, Ohio. He lived in Vermilion on Huron Street for 49 years. He continued with Wakefield as comptroller, then manager of planning and administrative controls. After the buyout of Wakefield by ITT Corporation, Bud became the vice president of the corporation's lighting division. After 28 years with ITT, Bud retired in the year 1980. During Bud's college time, he was a member of the Yale Glee Club and rode as a coxswain at Harvard University. He was active in the Vermilion Chamber of Commerce. He joined the Vermilion Rotary Club in June 25, 1958, where he coached high school students in their career interests, in which the student would seek part-time employment of interest at work sites after school. While in the Rotary Club, he received the Paul Harris Fellow Award. Bud was on the Vermilion YMCA Board of Directors, a member of the Christ Episcopal Church in Huron, where he sang in the choir. He also sang for some years with the Vermilionaires Chorus. Bud enjoyed hiking, theater, music, sailing, cooking, and vegetable gardening. Bud had an easygoing personality. One could quickly pick up a conversation and friendship with him. Robert S. Schlutterberg passed away on the 6th of June, 2001 at the age of 82. Stuart Price Kramer, 52nd President 1979 to 1980 and 1980 to 1981. Stuart P. Kramer had so many wonderful acknowledgments. It is very hard for one to write a short story about this man. Stu, as he was affectionately called by his peers in Vermilion, was born in Cleveland on July 16, 1911. After graduation from Cleveland Heights High, he went on to Hiram College for 2 years, transferring to Western Reserve University, where he received his law degree. The year was 1936. 1 year later, Stu was admitted to the Ohio bar. Stuart and Hazel Worcester were married in 1936. They had one child, Hazel, born in 1942. Stu was a Civil War historian and editor, television pioneer, trade show magician, naval officer, advertising executive, vice president of DV Display Corporation, cryptographer, and attorney at law. He was also known as Remark the Magician and as Professor Nemo, kid show performer, and by Mr. Meriwether, magical television weatherman and Ohio Belle telemagician. Stu was introduced to the wonders of magic in 1918 by his uncle, Herbert L. Cope, a Lyceum circuit speaker. The Great Blackstone was one of Stu's mentors who he first met in 1925. During World War II, he became a naval officer. His magic profession went with him in his service to his country. He was loaned to the USO to entertain the troops during these times of war. While serving his country, Stu became a cryptographer and frequently entertained during this naval tour of duty. Getting to the local scene, in 1959 to 1961, Stu fronted the Ohio Belle telemagician in Cleveland, Ohio on a daily television weather show. He would do a new trick each day either before or after he talked about the local weather situation. He could be seen on TV doing his act using the assistance of an attractive lady by his side helping out. The local Rotarians who were members during Stewart's long Rotary membership enjoyed Stewart doing his magical acts every time he got the chance. One of Stu's jobs in the club was to indoctrinate the newest members into Rotary. He would bring each one up front to give him or her the Rotary story, which would end with either a rope trick or his famous Chinese three-ring trick. In 1975, Stu was elected president of the Vermilion, Ohio Chamber of Commerce. He also served on the board of directors of Linwood Park. He also served as president of the local historical society. He had a vast interest in the Civil War and was a learned student of this war. He gave several talks about the generals of the war. He also had an extensive lead soldier collection, which he would display at several locations in town, exhibiting a scene of a battle in the Civil War period. He passed on at his daughter Hazel's home in Ithaca, New York on April 15, 2003 at the age of 91. Robert L. Kyle, 50th and 73rd President 1977 to 78 and 1999 to 2000. Robert L. Bob Kyle was born on Huron Street in Elyria, Ohio, on January 22, 1932, to Lloyd Stanley and Alice Marie Shoemaker Kyle. Bob's father was in the wholesale gasoline/oil and car servicing business most of his life prior to 1938. Because of this, Bob grew up moving throughout the northern area of Ohio with his family. While the family lived in Oberlin, Ohio, Bob began kindergarten there. Shortly thereafter, Bob's father had a chance to purchase a Dodge Plymouth agency located in Vermilion, Ohio. The business opened its doors on Memorial Day, 1938. In the fall of 1938, Bob started school in the Old State Street Schoolhouse located adjacent to the Nickel Plate Railroad. In the fall of 1940, the new grade school addition to the existing high school building was completed and ready for use. Hence, all students were transferred to the new building. Bob graduated from Vermilion High School in 1950 along with his 38 classmates. During his school years, Bob's extracurricular activities were movie projectionist, member of the Log Annual Book staff, and member of the high school band as clarinetist, also bass violin. After graduation, Bob had 1 year of working for his dad in the dealership before starting school at General Motors Institute of Technology, GM Tech, in Flint, Michigan. This was a 2-year co-op program involving the complete education of building and managing a GM dealership from the ground up. After graduation in August of 1953, Bob was employed in the new and used car sales staff until he received his U.S. Army draft greetings letter inviting him to become a soldier. Bob was sworn in on December 7th, 1953. During his basic training, he auditioned for and was accepted in the Army Band training program. After his training, Bob was sent to the 22nd Army Band in San Francisco, California. At this time of his life, Bob found himself playing beside some musicians who, after their stint in the service, went on to join bands such as Stan Kenton. After his service completion, Bob felt the family pull to go back into the family Buick Pontiac business. In 1957, Bob met the future love of his life, Nancy M. Rayner, at the Palladium Dance Hall in Elyria, Ohio. On May 21, 1960, Bob and Nancy were married. Bob carried on his music profession as an avocation, playing bass violin in the big dance band of Jimmy Dullio. Jimmy Dullio's band played in large dance halls such as Crystal Beach, Vermilion, the Avalon Ballroom in Cleveland, Ohio, etc. Bob and Nancy bore and raised 3 children, Deborah, Susan, and Dennis. Bob went on to become vice president of Kyle Motor Inc. and president of Kyle Leasing Inc. in Vermilion, Ohio. He retired in 1996 from the dealership and bought out his brothers from the leasing company in 2003. He enjoyed that business until the year 2012. He was a member of the Chamber of Commerce, Lions Club, Ely Lodge number 424 of the Free and Accepted Masons, was invited to join the Rotary Club of Vermilion in July 1964, and later was awarded the Paul Harris Fellow Rotary International, +1, and several Buick Pontiac business clubs. Some of Bob's hobbies include oil painting, wine and beer making, woodworking, making fine furniture, writing, playing his clarinet in the Vermilion Community Concert Band, and hitting the links as he is able.